What's up everybody, Teak from Battle City Games, back to bring y'all another post-Duelist Advance deck profile. Today we're taking a look at what I think is going to be another one of the strongest decks to come out of this set, and that's going to be Lunalights. This is a deck that's been around for years at this point, had some very powerful cards in the past, saw a little bit of competitive success with Spiral, but then kind of faded out. But with the new cards like Liger Dancer and Gold Leo from Duelist Advance, it's back at the forefront of the meta. And if you're watching this before any WCQs or EU WCQs, it's a deck that you should most definitely be preparing for. So in this deck profile, not only am I going to be doing the card by card, but I'm also going to discuss a little bit of strategy, a little bit of card choices against the deck even, or things you may want to watch out for, and just try to give you all the best information to play the best build of the deck as possible. Before we get into it, thank you for all the support on the Vanquish Soul video. It really means a lot. If you'd like to see content like that come out on the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also comment. I really enjoy engaging with y'all in the comments about theory and some of the strategy that I put into this particular deck builds. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the profile. So, starting off, we do have triple copies of the new Gold Leo out of Duelist Advance. This is an awesome card. When it's normal or special summoned, it lets you take a Lunalight monster from your deck, add it to your hand, and then send a card from hand to graveyard. The sending is obviously not a cost because it happens after adding, so that means it can trigger your Lunalight effects if you open with something like a Yellow Martin in hand. Additionally, it has another effect. When a Lunalight card is sent to your graveyard, you can add a Lunalight monster back from your graveyard to your hand. You don't necessarily have to do it on the card that you discard when you add. You could, theoretically, but in a lot of cases you'll be holding that effect until later on in the turn when you'll send something to graveyard like a Black Sheep or a Wolf, and then use Leo to pick it back up and get it into your hand. Overall, very powerful card, absolutely something you're going to want to play 3 of in every Lunalight build because of the consistency and extension that it also gives you. Moving on from there, double copies of an older Lunalight card. That's going to be Kaleido Chick. The fact that this is not a hard once per turn on the ability to send from deck or extra deck to graveyard is insane. It allows you to get multiple Lunalight names into the graveyard, multiple Leo Dancers into the graveyard, just a crazy card that you can recycle multiple times by bouncing it back to your hand and resummoning it or summoning it from the graveyard multiple times. Just all around powerful card. It also does have a secondary banish effect that says when it's banished, your opponent can't activate cards or effects in the battle phase of that turn. Pretty powerful if you are going for an OTK line and you do that. It can shut off some of your opponent's interactions that they might have been trying to save for the battle phase. Moving on from there, 2 copies of Black Sheep. This is the card that's going to be getting us to our polymerization in the deck. When he's in your hand, you can discard him and either add a polymerization from deck to hand or add a Lunalight monster from graveyard back to hand. And then if he's sent to the graveyard by card effect, he also lets you pick back up a Lunalight monster. So overall, very strong card. He is searchable, and he's not exactly a starter, so we don't want to play 3 copies, but he's absolutely something you want to get access to in your combo. As far as things you want to watch out for, or if you're playing against this deck, if your opponent sends him to the graveyard with something like a Masquerade and then tries to use a Gold Leo effect to pick him back up, that's usually a great time to use a Bestial or a DD Crow or whatever you might have, because it's going to cut them off of access to polymerization unless they hard drew the polymerization. And if they can't get to poly, it's harder for them to fuse into their Perfume Dancer and kind of get their combos going. So depending on their hand, you might just shut them off of their fusion plays right there. And if they're locked into fusions, because of a card we'll see in a minute, then that can really make things difficult for your opponent. So from there, a couple one-ups, starting with the new card Silverhound. So awesome card, 2 effects. They only happen in the graveyard, which is why we're only playing 1 copy of this card, because it's not a card we want to draw and like summon directly onto the field. First effect is when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon a Lunalight monster from your deck. It is important to note, while that monster is on the field, you are locked into summoning Lunalights from your extra deck, so you're going to be locked into fusions, essentially. And so you want to make sure that you have a way to get that card off board, and that's why I mentioned disrupting the Black Sheep from the graveyard in order to cut off access to Poly can actually be a choke point for this deck, depending on what the rest of the hand looks like. But still extremely powerful effect. Typically, we might be looking to send this to graveyard with a card effect, summon out Gold Leo, then Gold Leo can search whatever we need, such as a Black Sheep, and then send any other card from hand to graveyard. And that's kind of how our combos get going. Does also have a second graveyard effect. It's not just one. When it's in the graveyard and your opponent activates a spell or trap card, you can banish itself and a Lunalight fusion to negate that. So it summons when it's sent, and then it also sits there and threatens a spell or trap negate as well, which just makes it that much harder for your opponent to interact into your board. For another one Yellow Martin, I think this is all you need. I wouldn't fault you for playing 2 copies of this card in case one does get banished or something, but you can definitely get away with 1. And overall, powerful card. So when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, it lets you add a Lunalight spell from your deck to your hand. Previously, there wasn't very great targets because Lunalight Perfume doesn't count because there's space between Luna and Light for some reason. So you could really only search Lunalight Fusion, which wasn't always going to do that much for you. But because of a new card, Lunalight Masquerade and Duelist Advance, this now has a great search target. And not only that, but we do actually play it for its bounce effect as well. So when it's in your hand or graveyard, you can return a Lunalight monster you control, or Lunalight card you control, not even monster, to your hand and special summon it. It does get banished when it leaves the field after that, but we can kind of work around that by using it as Exceeds material for something like a Baguska if we want to. But being able to recycle some of our soft once per turns like Tiger and Wolf back to hand or Kaleido Chick back to hand is very powerful, while also giving us that additional body or replacing the body onto board as well. So very powerful card, but one we only need 1 of because it's not a starter in any way. It's definitely just an extender. Speaking of Lunalight Tiger, 1 copy. The fact that there's not a hard once per turn on the pendulum effect of this card is crazy. Being able to recycle it with Yellow Martin, with Perfume Dancer, and just get multiple activations is insane. I do want to make sure everybody remembers this card also has a monster effect that when it's destroyed, you just get to special summon a Lunalight back from your graveyard and its effects are not negated. So if your opponent does try to get cheeky and maybe hit your Tiger with a Ghost Ogre when you're using the pendulum effect, they're really just going to be hurting themselves because you can activate that monster effect. Don't forget about that when you're playing this deck or playing against it. For the other pendulum, 1 copy of Wolf. This being a soft once per turn Miracle Fusion in the pendulum scale is how we can get multiple Liger Dancers out. If you get Troll and Lockbirded or anything, this is one of the ways you're going to most effectively play around that while still getting your Liger Dancer to the board. The Pendulum effect, like I said, is a soft once per turn, so if you recycle this card back to hand, you can use it to perform multiple fusion summons on the same turn, as long as you're able to have the resources on your field or graveyard. Monster effect on this one's not as great. It provides piercing. It can technically come up if your opponent's just trying to wall up and you've used all your Liger Dancers effects or something, but overall we're playing this card for the Pendulum effect. Then for the honorary Lunalight card on the deck, 1 Tri-Brigade Fractal. We're playing this because we can discard it and send our Silverhound to graveyard by card effect directly from our deck, which will get us into our Leo Dancer. So this is an additional starter. The only downside is if you hard draw the Silverhound and the Fractal, then you don't have a target for the Fractal. But we're willing to take that risk because we can probably still combo in that situation more often than not. You could play multiple copies of this card, but I'm choosing to go a different route, which you'll see in a moment. But 1 copy of Fractal. For the hand traps, we do have limited space in this deck. Most builds that I've seen play between like 9 and maybe like 15 at most. So we're going to be on 12. We've got triple copies of Fuelos. With limited space, I think you only really have room for 1 Charmy. And my Charmy of choice is Fuelos because it's going to hit the widest range of decks right now. Even against something like Vanquish Soul, you're probably going to get minimum 1 draw, typically 2, maybe 3 at most. Against Malice, you'll get a couple draws. Against pretty much everything else in the format, you'll get anywhere from minimum 2 on up, depending on how hard your opponent chooses to play into the card, versus something like Meows, where some decks don't care about it at all, or something like Perulia, which, again, a Malice hand that opens Underground may not even summon from hand, may not even give you a draw, so Fuelos is just the most well-rounded for Game 1. You could always side this out for a different Charmy Games 2 and 3 if it's appropriate. From there, another powerful hand trap is going to be Droll and Lockbird. The only deck that doesn't really care too much about this card is Malice, and even they can be hit by it to a degree. But a lot of other decks in the format are going to be at least severely hindered in their board when you do Droll and Lockbird them. And again, because we're playing limited amounts of hand traps, we want to make sure we're having a high impact with the hand traps we're using. After saying that, probably the technically weakest hand trap we're playing is going to be Ash Blossom. A couple of reasons I've chosen to play this card. One, I think it's gotten better since last format. With decks like Lunalight, trying to use Silverhound to summon from deck, that's a great Ash target. For Vanquish Soul, if they start with something like Stake Your Soul, you can Ash that and sometimes just end their turn entirely. But also, if our opponent tries to hit us with a Fuelos or a Meows, we want to Ash that if possible. I've seen people say, so what, you can double Fua me, I'm just going to play through it, set up double Liger Dancer. The problem with that theory, in a lot of cases, is you're giving your opponent so many draws that they're going to draw into more hand traps. They're going to draw into Bystials, they're going to draw into Crows, they're going to draw into Nibiru, or whatever they might be playing, and that's just going to make it harder for you to set up that board. Yes, if you get to the board, you don't really care how many cards they have in hand, but if they draw too many hand traps, they're just going to stop you from getting to that board. So if my opponent hits me with a Fua or a Meows, I'm going to Ash it if I have the ability to. And then the last hand trap, this is one you should be playing if you have access to it. That's going to be Dominus Impulse. The fact that this card stops so many effects in the graveyard, it's one of the most powerful hand traps into Mitsurugi, in my opinion, which is everywhere at the moment. It's just a card, but if your deck allows you to play it based on the attributes you play, you should be including it. If you don't have access to this card for any reason, I would maybe suggest looking at something like a Forbidden Droplet, which isn't a hand trap, but can be a very powerful board breaker, and one that we don't mind playing in this deck, because it does help get some Lunalights into graveyard. By cost, not by card effect, remember that, but it's still a viable alternative if you don't have access to Impulse right now. Then moving into the spells and traps, triple copies of the new Lunalight Masquerade. This is a great card, really solid support for the deck. Like I said, it's nice to see finally a good searchable Lunalight card for Yellow Martin. And this has a couple effects. First off, it's a continuous spell with an ignition effect that says you can send one Lunalight monster from your deck to the graveyard. So since it's sending by card effect, this is how we can get a card like Yellow Martin to graveyard to trigger if she's not already there. We can send Silverhound, Black Sheep, whatever we need to get into graveyard, we can get there. And then it also has some follow-up effects. When you fusion summon a Lunalight monster, you can add polymerization from your graveyard back to your hand. So if we use Poly, fusion summon, we can then choose to add it back to our hand to have access to another fusion summon. And on top of that, you can choose to discard a card after you add Poly back. And for the rest of the turn, once during the rest of the turn, if you fusion summon a Lunalight monster, you can do so by banishing materials from your graveyard. So it's kind of like another copy of Wolf. You won't always need to do the banish effect, but it can kind of give you that versatility if you've been cut off from Wolf for any reason. Again, if you're like under Droll or your resources are a little bit limited, that can be a way that you can at least stick a Liger Dancer to board, which is nice. Overall, it's a powerful card. It is a starter for us, which is why we're playing 3 copies. From there, another starter, triple Fire Formation Tinky. Most of our Lunalights, if not all of them, I think, are Beast Warriors, so this can search the majority of our deck. It can also search Fractal, then we discard the Fractal and send the Silverhound. That's why we're only playing 1 copy of Fractal, because Tinky is the more versatile of a card. If we were playing 3 Fractal, once you've used the first one to send your Silverhound, the other 2 are going to be kind of dead. But with Tinky, no matter when you draw it, it will be live, unless you've gone through all your Lunalight names for some reason. But overall, a very powerful card, and also something we can search for our extra deck. 3 more spells here. triple copies of Foolish Burial Goods. I'm choosing to play this engine in the deck because it acts as another 3 starters for us. By sending Serenade Dance, we can then use Serenade Dance to summon directly from deck. You can also technically send Perfume if you need to pick back up a Lunalight card from your graveyard, or rather, if you want to search a Lunalight card from your deck by banishing it from your graveyard. So it's got some versatility. We are also playing one other target for it, but you'll see towards the end of the main deck profile. But it's another starter. That's what we want. This is a deck where you really want to draw anywhere from 3 to 4 engine cards and only 1 to 2 hand traps. Your hands that consist of 4 hand traps are typically not going to be able to play through Disruption, whereas if you have 3 or 4 engine cards, there's a good chance that you're playing through more hand traps than your opponent will have access to. So we want to make sure we have plenty of starters and extenders in the deck when we're building it. Then for Lunalight Perfume, we're only on 2 copies. It's not a starter unless you dump it to your graveyard with Foolish Burial Goods, but Lunalight Perfume by itself is not going to start any of your plays. It's more of an extender. It is not a hard once per turn, so it's fine if you end up with 2 of these in rotation, but definitely not something we need 3 of. But still a very powerful card, and it is now searchable thanks to Perfume Dancer. So then for a couple one-ups, one Lunalight Fusion. I know some people don't play this in their builds. I like this card. It's just polymerization, but if your opponent controls a monster summoned from the extra deck, you can also use 1 material from your deck or extra deck when fusion summoning. So if you're going second, sometimes you can just open Lunalight Fusion and hard make a Liger Dancer as your first action, which completely messes up your opponent's game plan 9 times out of 10, especially for game 1. If you make the Liger Dancer, you just have that Raigeki effect to threaten their entire board. You can go to battle phase and attack over 2 monsters with Liger Dancer, and then use Raigeki afterwards, and then continue to combo. So this kind of gives you more versatility going second, which is not something we mind at all. Even if we start by maybe sending a Mart into graveyard and searching this when we go second, it's still versatile, and that's why I like to have access to it in the deck. Then 1 copy of Polymerization, because we can recycle this with Masquerade, and I forgot to mention, but Kaleido Chick does also give us the ability to pick this back up when she's used as fusion material. So we have multiple ways of getting this card back into our hand. We have ways of searching this card, so we don't really need more than 1 copy. Then for the last spell card, 1 Foolish Burial. This is just another starter or extender for the deck. It can get our Silverhound to graveyard, it can get our Yellow Mart into graveyard, and help us get our combos going or play through Disruption. Then for the traps, you heard me mention 1 copy of Serenade Dance. We are never aiming to use the on-field effect of this card, but the graveyard effect is so powerful, just being able to discard a card, summon a Lunalight from deck, and get our combo rolling. Overall, it's always been a powerful card for Lunalight, and that hasn't changed with the new support. And for the last card in the main deck, 1 copy of Black Goat Laughs. This is that card we can send off Foolish Burial Goods. It's a card that's good going first or second. Going first, if we hard draw this card, we can wait to see what our opponent's on, and then flip it, calling their most impactful monster, and just cut them off from that monster for the rest of the turn. So if we're against something like Rizio, we can just flip it, call Detonator. Now we don't have to worry about a Detonator coming out for the turn. If we're going second, we can send it all Foolish Burial Goods, banish it, call whatever monster is most threatening to us on the board, and same thing, we don't have to worry about that effect for a turn. So it's not a card you would ever consider playing 2 or 3 copies of in the deck, but I think 1 copy when you're playing that Foolish Burial package is great. So we're on a flat 40 for the main deck. There are a couple of soft bricks in the deck, so I've seen people bump the deck count up to anywhere from 42 to 45. But like I said, you want to make sure you're drawing engine in the deck, so I wanted to keep it at 40 to maximize my chances of drawing those multiple engine pieces to help me play through Disruption. Moving into the extra deck, we're going to start with triple copies of the new Lunalight Perfume Dancer. Very powerful card that the deck got this set. Couple of effects on it. First off, it requires any 2 Lunalight monsters, so it's very easy to get out. It doesn't have any name restrictions like some of the larger Lunalights have. When it's summoned, you can add a Lunalight Perfume from your deck to your hand, so that's how we're getting direct access to Perfume now. And then when it's on the field, you can return a Lunalight card you control to the hand, and then optionally special summon a Lunalight monster from your hand. So this is another way that we can return Tiger or Wolf from the Pendulum Zones back to our hand to reactivate and use again. We can also use it to recycle Kaleido Chick back, summon her back out, reset her soft once per turn, so we can send additional copies of something like Leo Dancer to the graveyard. Very versatile on how you want to use this card. And then it does also even have a graveyard effect. When it's in the graveyard, you can banish it. This turn, all monsters your opponent controls lose attack equal to their original defense. So in the mirror match, this is how we can get over some of our opponent's Liger Dancers. Liger Dancer has 3,800 attack and 3,500 defense, and since this is a Lunalight card, it will be affected and it will go down to only 300 attack, making it very easy for us to get over. Also useful against other decks that put up large monsters. It makes a detonator smaller, it makes a Murakumo not too much smaller, but it does make it smaller, so it does have some versatility in how we can use it there. And because we'll be sending a lot of Lunalights to graveyard off of our Liger Dancer, it's nice to have those graveyard effects to utilize. Speaking of Liger Dancer, we are on 2 copies. Theoretically, you could play 3 copies of this card. I've seen some early lists do it, but most lists are opting for 2. Because if you get 2 of this card out, you're winning the game. Sometimes if you get 1 copy of this card out, you're winning the game. So we don't really need the 3rd copy, and the extra deck is a little bit tight, and we've chosen to go with some other cards instead. But what this card does, it requires Lunalight, Leo Dancer, plus 3 other Lunalights to fusion summon, so it requires a total of 4 Lunalight monsters. And then it is unaffected by non-Lunalight effects. I've seen people asking online, like, does this card affect it? Does this card? If the card does not have Lunalight in its name, it doesn't matter. It will not affect this card. Super Poly can't affect this card. Mirror Jade can't affect this card. If your card does not have Lunalight in the name, it's not going to touch Liger Dancer. End of story. So that's a very powerful effect on a 3,800 body. On top of that, it has a soft once per turn Raigeki that can destroy all of your opponent's special summon monsters. My one tip with this is I see people use this effect really early. They'll just let their opponent get 2 or 3 monsters on board and then fire off the effect. Wait until your opponent has something that actually threatens this card. If your opponent puts 4 bodies on board and now you're worried about a Underworld Goddess, fire off the effect. If your opponent is looking like they're going to put up something that has more attack than your Liger Dancer that maybe can't be destroyed by it, fire off the effect. But if your opponent's just putting bodies out, save the effect until you actually are threatened by something. Because once you've used that effect for the turn, even though it's a soft once per turn, unless you have a second Liger Dancer out, your opponent doesn't have to worry about it anymore, and then they're more free to do their combos. So really try to maximize when you're using that effect to get the most value and have the most impact against your opponent trying to break your board. She does also have the ability to attack twice, by the way, so that's how we can easily OTK. Swinging twice with 3,800 or more attack is going to kill our opponent very quickly. Moving on from there, we are playing double copies of Leo Dancer. We're playing 2 Liger Dancers, so we need 2 Leo Dancer to facilitate summoning both of them. Leo Dancer is also an out 2 Liger Dancer in the mirror match. So Liger Dancer is unaffected by non-Lunalight cards, but that means if I have a Liger Dancer, you have a Liger Dancer, they can stare at each other and they can blow each other up. Leo Dancer is unable to be destroyed by card effects. So if you have a Liger Dancer, I have a Leo Dancer, your Liger Dancer can't destroy my Leo Dancer, but I can use my Lunalight card effects to help my Leo Dancer kill your Liger Dancer. So in the mirror match, I strongly suggest looking to see if it's the correct choice to maybe go into a Leo Dancer instead of a Liger Dancer if you're trying to play through your opponent's board. Speaking of Leo Dancer, we are playing 1 Panther Dancer. We need this to summon the Leo Dancer. We're not aiming to summon this card out ever, but we do need it to be able to summon the Leo Dancer since we want to be able to out Liger Dancers. And then the last Lunalight name is 1 Saber Dancer. This just requires any 3 Lunalight names, which is nice, but we're typically not summoning this card. It does have a powerful graveyard effect where not on the turn it's sent to the graveyard, but any other turn it can banish itself from graveyard, and one of your Lunalight fusion monsters gains 3,000 attack for a turn. So an example of how we would be using this effect is on our opponent's turn, maybe we Liger Dancer, send this to clear their board. On our turn, we banish it, target our Liger Dancer, and now we have a 6800 attack Liger Dancer that can attack twice and is unaffected by other card effects. So that makes it even easier to kill our opponent. Or if they did wall up with some big monsters, makes it that much easier to kill those big monsters. So just a good card, and we do need a lot of Lunalight names to send off of our Liger Dancer, because we're going to go through a couple of names during combo. We're going to go through at least one Perfume Dancer and at least one Leo Dancer, typically a little bit more than that. And then every turn we use our Liger Dancer, we're going to be sending another name from extra deck to graveyard. So you want to make sure that you're not running out of names too early. Moving into the Link monsters, one Cross Sheep. This is a card that facilitates combos, because when a fusion monster is summoned to a zone it points to, we can special summon back a monster from our graveyard. So we can summon this out, summon our Perfume Dancer to the zone, bring back a Lunalight name, and continue comboing. Typically, you're going to use this to facilitate an inboard that includes an SP Little Knight and a Baguska. Because Baguska doesn't affect our Liger Dancers, it just makes it that much harder for our opponent to play through our board while not affecting us at all. And then we do have that one copy of SP Little Knight I mentioned. Just a good piece to our inboard. Sometimes your weaker boards, if you do get disrupted and you're not going to get to a Liger Dancer, you can still end on like SP plus Baguska, which in a lot of cases will also just be enough to get your opponent to pass back to you, so you can try for your Liger Dancer again. And then we do have that one copy of Baguska. I've also seen people ask online, if Baguska is on field and I summon Liger Dancer after, is Liger Dancer affected by Baguska? This is not like Skill Drain. Skill Drain, if it's already face up on the field, it just negates the effects of everything on the field. So when Liger Dancer comes out, she will be negated. She will not have any of her effects. Baguska only stops activated effects, and the unaffected part of Liger Dancer is not an activated effect. It's a continuous effect. So even if Baguska is out, Liger Dancer will come out. She's not affected by Baguska at all, and we can keep playing. So that's part of what makes this card so strong in the deck, because we can set up our Liger Dancers on our SP, also have a Baguska, and we don't care about it at all. While now our opponent not only has to play through double Raigeki, an SP banish, but they also have to figure out a way to get Baguska off board so they can even activate their monster effects on the field. Then for another name, we do have Dagaris the Timeless. This is just another card we can make with some of our level 4 bodies. Getting the ability to detach, draw 2, and discard 1 is a great way to not only filter into our deck for either extenders or hand traps, but also to trigger some of our Lunalight effects as well. So it's just a good card overall for your extra deck. Another way we can trigger our names is through Battle in Box or Dempsey. We obviously don't have any Fire Warriors to search, but his second effect to detach a material to make him, I believe it's unaffected by card effects, does mean it detaches for card effect, not for cost. So that means that it will trigger any Lunalights under him. So some of our like soft once per turns on our level 4s, we can trigger multiple times with Dempsey. And then for the last card, one Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King. This is how we're searching Tinky. We can just take any 2 of our Lunalight monsters, overlay them into this, get Tinky, Tinky get Fractal, so on and so forth. And he does also have a powerful on-field effect, just attach a material, negate all of our face-up monsters. So if you get to him and your opponent has a board, you kind of have to wonder, like, should they interact with him? If they can't interact with him, they just risk their entire board of monsters being negated for the rest of the turn, which is powerful. But definitely a card you want to include, because you always want to have access to Tinky. So that wraps up the deck profile. Like I said, I think this is going to be one of the most popular and possibly most powerful decks, not only going into any WCQ, EU WCQ, but at least up until we get Justice Hunters in August, quite possibly past that as well. So it's a deck, if you're interested in playing, you want to make sure you have the best build, you understand the card choices, and if you're playing against the deck, you want to understand where to interact with it. So I hope this profile was helpful in that respect for y'all. As always, I'm Teague with Battle City Games. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care.